In this video, we'll be looking at adding project resources. This includes looking at what is a project resource, as well as creating your resource list. So in Microsoft Project, after you have identified some of your project tasks, you can now start assigning some of those resources to help complete those tasks. If you do that, Project can help identify any potential resource shortages. It can identify underutilized resources, as well as determining the cost of each task, as well as the project as a whole. So to start adding in some of the resources, you need to change your project view. If you change from Gantt chart to resource sheet, and this is where you'll start entering some of your resources. And there's three main types of resources. That's a work resource, which is any people or equipment, a material resource, which is any items that are consumed whilst working on the project, or a cost resource, which is a fixed cost of a task which isn't dependent on the work performed. So if I want to start adding in some work resources, so for example for my project, in arranging a party, I need a party organizer. So if I type in here party organizer, and I also can specify a name if necessary. And I also need a DJ and a cake maker. And you can see by default it's set it as a work type resource, but you can change that if it's a different resource. In the initials column, this is when you assign the resource to the tasks, and it helps you to remember what the resource name is. So if I just change that default name, so if I put PO just to remind myself a bit more detail here. And in the group column, if there's any common resources I want to group together, it might be a department, I can add that here. In this maximum unit column, Project automatically always calculates it at 100% because most resources work full-time on a project. But you can also change this if people are working part-time, so all you need to do is just change the percentage. In the standard rate, you can change the cost per hour of the resource. So for example, party organizer, I'll just put them as £10 per hour here and here. There won't be any overtime rate, so I'll leave that. In the cost per unit, this is any other additional costs. So for example, there could be a setup cost. So I can put that cost in there if necessary. And then you've got the accrue at column. So this is where you can change when you want the cost to be associated at. So you can change it to different options here. And then you've got the calendar. If you want to change it to a different working calendar, which you've set up at the beginning, you can do that here. That's with my work resources. Now I can start adding in some other types of resources. So for example, I've got a cost resource. So I've got to pay for the venue, as well as I have to pay for the food. So change the type to a cost resource. So for a cost resource, you don't actually allocate any costs until you assign the resource to the task. So I'm actually going to leave the rest of those columns blank. If I look at a material resource, I'm going to type in, for example, got to pay for petrol, it's material costs, and in the material column, that's the unit of measure. So if I put litres, if I say, for example, it's roughly about £1.30 per litre. So then I've allocated cost to that resource. So hopefully that gave you a bit of insight to how to start adding some resources into your project.